Hello and welcome back to Homeschool Together. We are now in Macedonia,
Yeah.
Greece, and we happen to go all the way to India.
Yeah.
That's for next week. Let's talk about today. Alexander, the king of Macedonia, the king of kings, going across Asia and going on a kind of a long sightseeing tour.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's for sure, in a very few years. So let's go ahead and get into it. Obviously, he was the big story this week.
Yep.
But let's talk about what we finished. What you guys should have finished this week, which
Yep.
is the Tales of the Odyssey.
Right. So this is Mary Pope Osborne, who wrote Magic Treehouse
Magic Treehouse.
Magic Treehouse fame. And so this is done in a part 1 and part 2. And
There's no like, it's not like anything different. It's just the Odyssey, but it's kind of broken up into 2 pieces.
Yeah, and so each one of them has a few major parts.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this one for the second part, for example, is the Gray-Eyed Goddess. So that's going to be Circe, return to Ithaca, and the final battle.
Gray-Eyed Goddess is Athena, Ariel.
Oh.
That's right.
I thought
Circe is not the Gray-Eyed Goddess.
I guess she's not really a goddess, is she? She's okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
Anywho, so all right, fine.
She isn't. Obviously, I've been doing all my
Well,
all the reading these days.
Anywho, so yes, we finished both part 1 and part 2 of this, and they were both fantastic. And even though we don't really care for Magic Treehouse because it's kind of, I mean, it's really, Jack said, Annie said, Jack said.
Yeah.
This was done incredibly well, and I think is perfectly suited for this age.
You're absolutely right. It's 100% correct. It's absolutely suited for this age, and even for an adult, if you want to read the story and you don't want to get into the prose of the original story, this is such an easily consumable thing. This is great for an older learner who might be coming along, who has a little bit more skills at reading. They can go ahead and read these themselves. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. The chapters are like the perfect length. Yeah. They're the perfect like touch, because the story's pretty violent. It's pretty aggressive in some areas. And she handles it very, very well. And I just loved it. I loved reading it. We actually finished it a little bit early. We actually kind of last week we finished it. So because I was just really enjoying reading it.
And our daughters both were too, or even our 4-year-old really enjoyed the story.
Really enjoyed it.
So I think these are a big win from us. There are obviously many other versions of the Odyssey that you could get. Yeah. But I think it's worth investing in getting these if your library doesn't happen to have them.
Absolutely.
Because they really are really quality.
You can see the reading. There's not a lot of reading on there. So you'll see it's like, oh, that's 250 pages. It is not 250 pages.
Yeah.
You can read these really, really quick. I loved them. They're absolutely going to stay on the shelf. I would recommend buying them.
Yeah, we enjoyed buying them. I think it's going to be good to have them around because they are a quick read, and I could see our older daughter picking this up and wanting to read this again. Yeah.
She loved the story.
Really good pickup.
All the way to the end. It was really, really, really good. We'll talk a little bit about some adult books that we came across.
Yes.
So the Oxford University Press puts out these kind of introduction books, and they're really, really good. They're kind of, each one is written by a different professional in that specific area, and they cover math concepts, history, all across the spectrum. But here I want to talk a little bit about, this one's about ancient Greece. So it'll be a really nice primer. They're all about 200 pages long. The writing is it's not textbook level or anything like that, so it's very consumable, but it gives you all the information you need as an educator. So Ariel's been making recommendations. I wanted to point these out. You can get these at your library. You can pick them up for pretty cheap. I have another one here that's about classical mythology. So this would cover many regions of classical mythology, not just Greece. So if you wanted to get more of a primer there. And I wanted to give a little honorable mention if you're starting off early, and you're watching these videos and you haven't yet started and you're just kind of like, okay, what's Matt and Ariel doing for this whole thing? There's one on Egyptian myth as well. So if you're doing Egypt, you can do this. I just wanted to make sure.
We picked these up after we got done with Egypt. But these are nice too because each of the subjects, if like it's Sparta, for example, it's like 10 pages.
It's not a lot.
It's really short. This is a great way if you just want to get up to speed really quickly before you start teaching the material, or if you have an older learner. Think of these as kind of like Ancient Civ's Cliff Notes.
Yeah, they're primers. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so these are great to have around.
I love the form factor. You can just
They're
take it
nice
with
and small.
Yeah, but you can take it with you if you're going to swim class or you're going to basketball practice or something and you want something to do. You can go ahead and pull one of these out and get a little bit of education in your brain.
These all have numbers, so I'm thinking that this is part of a much larger set. These would be good, like, just read like 10 pages before bed or something, just to increase your own general knowledge. But yeah, we found these thrifting and they were awesome.
Absolutely awesome. So one of the things about covering Alexander is the quest, right? Follow him through Asia and where he went.
And trying to understand the scale of that is really difficult.
And the timeline too, because a lot of the funny thing is we're talking about these ancient civilizations and they last hundreds of years and thousands of years. You know, as we're still going on, the Egyptians are still plugging away on the Nile, right? And all of a sudden, this Greek guy comes in with a bunch of hoplites and ends up taking over, you know, a large swath of the world at the time. And I loved using this "When on Earth" because it really just kind of walked you through the path of what he did as he went from obviously Macedonia down into Greece, how he went across Anatolia, south through kind of the Middle East area, and then into Egypt, became crowned pharaoh, then went east, took over Persia, and ended up goofing around up here in the Himalayas and the eastern Himalayan areas, and then went south down the Indus River, which you're going to start studying next week, and then down into India. It's absolutely amazing to think that there were Greeks in India fighting, you know, war elephants at the end of his life, and then he was, you know, essentially the ruler of Central Asia. It's just such an incredibly wild story. I mean, obviously it's war and campaign and death and misery and all that stuff, but just the achievement of doing all this was just wild.
The span. And this was a really great book to help with that understanding, because we also got, and we had to return it from the library, so I'm sorry, but we had Who Was Alexander the Great, which was a great book. All those who was or who is, they're all great books.
Then there's also, you wouldn't want to be I think a slave or a fighter in Alexander's army or something. We covered it in our Around the World journey when we did Macedonia.
Right. And the library, I don't know if somebody lost the book or something, but they don't have it anymore. So I'll put that in the show notes, because those You Wouldn't Want to Be's are great books and we really love them, but we couldn't get that one. So anyway, when we read Who Was Alexander the Great, it was obviously a great book because the Who Is series is always good, but it was really hard for our daughter to understand the scale. So continuing to open up this page and just remind her as we were reading that book, hey, guess what? Remember where we're at on the, you know, on the map. This When on Earth book is fantastic. We highly recommend that you add that to your reference library.
And then doing some of this while the thing that I always like to do is kind of like my method is I like her to do some art because she can listen. She has this great ability to listen while doing something tactile. So I would have this book out and I gave her a map. She decided to use marker at the last minute, but you could do kind of like a lot of map superposition.
Yeah, this is a good map work week.
Putting the little dots as the path all the way around and then reading it all the way through. Really, really good. I enjoyed this exercise, and this was, you know, because we, again, as I kind of said earlier, you're always talking about so many hundreds of years, and all of a sudden you talk about something that is so vast and grand.
Happened in only a couple of years.
It happened in 9 years, right? And the fact that he was in his 20s, I'm like, my goodness, I'm in my 40s and I haven't achieved anything. But compared to this, right? And a lot of people would say, oh, what achievement? It's like war and violence and all that stuff, and understandable. But like, it's such an amazing, you know, weird moment in history.
Well, and trying to get behind his motivations and things, and trying to understand what he was doing.
We'll go a little bit into that with our movie recommendation for you adults, not the children. For the adults, she kept asking the same question. Why is he doing this?
Why are we still...
So, and I think here's the answer. Quote from Philip the Macedonian. His father says, "My son, you must find a kingdom big enough for your ambitions."
Right, yeah.
And so you can, maybe the answer is ambition. And so that was...
It was a really interesting story.
And the amazing thing is you have these like wonderful mosaic art pieces that are all around. So we talked a little bit about mosaic art because in the... In a lot of the artwork we kept seeing, they would always show this one famous mosaic of Alexander on a horse, and his horse, oh God, I can't remember what was the name. It was
I don't remember.
Bacchus. Anyway, he had a horse that he supposedly tamed when he was young, and then he rode it forever until it died, and then I think he made a shrine to it. But there's this famous mosaic art piece that of Alexander. Right there.
I believe it's right here in the corner.
And so we talked a little bit about mosaic art and everything. I pulled up some pictures and videos of how to do that. And so I printed off the famous piece of art, and I told my daughter, I said, hey, I want you to color this, but you can't scribble color. You got to do dots, as if you're placing little pieces of mosaic art. And so that was really cool. Nice little change of pace. I know we do a lot of silly artwork all the time, but that's something, you know, our kids enjoy, and obviously your kids can enjoy different things, right? But but this was something she really, really liked.
So
It was
if
a nice
you
change.
wanted to do something with mosaics, making a stepping stone, or
Yep.
there's different mosaic art kits online, I'll see if I can find something like that. This would be a great week to do that because it's a kind of good way to involve art study with it.
So going back to it, Alexander's big accomplishments, kind of like those corner pieces of what made him the most famous were these two big battles, Isis and Gaugamela. And then we've recommended this before when we were talking about the Persians and the Greeks, the battles that changed history, and they had some nice write-ups in here about his battles in that area. And it was really fun because we could do, here's Isis, so this was on the south end of modern day Turkey, and then across the lake. And I had my daughter do the obviously the battle plan in detail, and then we went ahead and did the Gods and Generals video, which we've recommended in the past. They had a nice kind of workup on this battle, walking you through the day 1, day 2, day 3 type of thing of how everything got prepared and got ready and everything, and how he was chasing Darius, and really, really cool stuff. And then finally Gaugamela, which cemented his rule of Persia, was another big battle that he went through. So these were two very big momentous moments that really defined the arc of where he was, because if he would have failed here or there, maybe it wouldn't have been as big, and then it would have been pulled back and stuff. But this was the real moment where the ambition became unchained. And so
this is a great book, and we've really enjoyed it.
Loved it.
This is definitely not for this age range. It's much older, but it's really great for the visuals that you can get out of it. So as a parent, I know we like to kind of like skim read and summarize for our daughter, and then show her the pictures and where the troops were, and kind of draw some things out for her. And we've done different battle plans and stuff just for she can kind of understand the scale, or we can try to understand the scale.
I was showing it to my dad, and he loved it so much he picked up a copy for us.
Yeah, so the battles that changed history. This is a DK Smithsonian, so this is a great reference book that we'll keep with us for the long term of all of our studies. I actually bought it for you, and we've used it more for this year of homeschooling than I ever would have anticipated.
Absolutely.
So,
whoa. Pretty rare for us, Ariel, to do a game recommendation. If you know our podcast, wait a minute, if they don't know about the podcast, stop, pause, don't leave. Head on over to your favorite podcast app and subscribe to our podcast. Ariel, if the people who've been with us for a while know we love games. We do a lot of game schooling.
We do love games.
Zeus on the Loose.
And I guess we haven't talked about all of the games we played, because we did also play. What's the one with where you're building up on it's the Greek one with the Greek gods in the. But I'm losing it, but I'm gonna put that in here because that one's a really fun building game. But Zeus on the Loose is from Game Right, and this is all a numbers game.
Are you talking about Seven Wonders?
No, not Seven Wonders. Although that's a really good one for Ancient Civs. We should really show that one time.
Yeah.
No, I can't think of it. It's the one with all the white, and you're building the white, house pieces, and then you have the god. It's the gods and goddesses. It's a Greek one. I will show it another time. I digress. Zeus on
Ariel's
the Loose.
going to title it The Game We Couldn't Remember, and it's down in the show notes below.
It's going to come to me the moment we turn off the video.
Yeah.
So Zeus on the Loose is really great. It's a Game Right card game, and it has to do with trying to get up to 100. Actually, we played this together one time when we went out on a date night. We took it to the restaurant with us.
It was a rip-roaring dinner of us playing
Zeus on the Loose.
So very fun. They have the gods obviously have special abilities.
Santorini. I'm sorry, it just came to me.
Well, see,
Santorini is the name of the game.
That would have been better with if you're doing the Mycenaeans and the Minoans. The Santorini would be the game for that, because that's part of the arc from the Minoans to the Mycenaeans, and there's a question of whether or not why the Minoans kind of disappeared, and they I think they thought it was a volcanic eruption on that island. And so,
but we realized it like 3 weeks too late.
Yeah,
so
we played it.
We played it.
Hey, come on. Whatever. Close enough.
It was Christmas.
Close enough. We've lost all the Cyprus and the Greek people. But anyway, so we had the numbers, and you're just adding up to 100, right? And everything. And then the gods give you different abilities, and they have the ability written on the bottom of the card and stuff. It's a really, really fun, like just simple card game.
So yeah, it's got addition. So talk about all the math skills.
Addition, multiplication. I think there's some subtraction in there as well, because you're some gods will reduce the value of the pile and everything. Really great math type of game. So if you're looking for some type of math game
card game
that fits obviously the genre that you're using, you obviously could play this all the Greek weeks behind that we've already covered, but
Yep.
we just remembered this week that we had Zeus on the Loose.
Yes, so it says that, so this is 2 to 5 players, ages 8 and up. Our daughter is 8 and she can play this very well. So I think that that's probably, I mean, I think she could have probably played this at 7 maybe. Some of the multiplication's really pretty easy. So anyway, this is a really good one if you don't have it, and Game Right always makes great quality games.
Great quality.
We have lots of Game Right.
So then Ariel and I watched a movie this week. Alexander, the old Oliver Stone movie made in the mid-2000s, got bad tomato rating, but we decided to watch the ultimate cut, not the director's cut.
Well, that was the one that was for rent on Amazon.
Yeah,
So
it was the director's cut or the ultimate cut.
Ultimate, I think.
And we were sold by the word ultimate because obviously that means better.
Why wouldn't you want more?
Why wouldn't you want the
but
ultimate?
It was 3.5 hours?
It was about, it was 3+. And I tell you what, we watched it in 2 chunks because, we're homeschoolers and we're busy people. We can't watch one movie all the way through, let alone...
Was it 2 chunks or 3 chunks? We were so proud of ourselves for finishing the darn movie.
And we did it in a weekend, guys.
Because we never get to finish movies. I don't know if you're like us, but we watch like half a movie and then remember a week later, oh, we're going to finish that movie. And we don't get to the other half because we're tired. But we actually did watch it. It was really, really good.
What was really interesting about the movie, and obviously this is not for kids,
no,
but
not
for the adults,
kids.
But they were jumping back and forth in time when he was a younger man, battling a lot of the turmoil within his father's,
Val Kilmer,
who played by Val Kilmer, kind of like his death and him taking over, and like his relationship with his mother,
Angelina
Jolie, Olympus, I think was her name, and then jumping forward as he's moving through Asia, and then juxtaposing those two experiences. So all this kind of, horrible parenting over here, and then this huge ambition, and you can see a lot of like the decay of his, his life over those 9 years or so as he's running through Asia, being kind of this cause of like this really turmoil of his younger life and trying to find out who he is and not really understanding who he was. And I loved how he, Colin Farrell obviously played Alexander. The battle scenes were incredible, very bloody and very violent. But again, seeing Greek hoplites fight war elephants in India is such a trippy thought.
It was really weird to see them all like in the jungle and things. And
stuff.
it gave me a much different appreciation than I think we could have gotten by reading it alone. Yeah. You might be able to find some clips on YouTube if you
there's a ton of clips.
If you kind of pre-watch and make sure that it's safe for your learners, you can get some pieces like some of the setups for the battles and some different things. It was a really interesting movie. I think helped really bring this home for us. But the whole movie definitely is only for adults.
Yeah, definitely.
So
let the kids watch that.
Yeah, but that was really great. And so this concluded our whole study of Macedonia and Alexander the Great. And I feel like we really covered it.
I think we really hit Greece. I know, like in the past videos we talked about, I think Egypt we did like 3 or 4 weeks, and at the end of 3 or 4 weeks you're pretty much done. And I think we're ending right at the right time where we've really hammered the Greece and all the various aspects.
Yeah.
And I think with something with Greece that, you can find something that you're interested in. There's so much there, just like with the Egyptians, just like with some of the Central Asia stuff, like the Mesopotamian area, you can find things that you're really, really interested in, and that your child can gravitate to. And 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks on Greece, I think is just the perfect amount of time.
Well, so you've got 1 week on the Mycenaeans and the Minoans, and then 4 weeks of Greece, and then 1 week on the Macedonians and Alexander the Great. So really altogether, it's like a 6-week chunk you're talking about the same area. So I think that definitely if you want
to... You have the same experience of when we finished all of those weeks of the Mesopotamia, where it's like Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, and it's just like the same group same group taking over the same area.
Yeah, I think you definitely could take those 4 weeks of Greece in the middle, and you could probably condense if you added some gods and goddesses mythology stuff kind of out into the Mycenaeans and Minoans and the Macedonian weeks. Because this Macedonian week there wasn't that much going on. And we talked about the Odyssey books, and they are really a quick read. So I don't think that you need those extra weeks to finish the chapter book, certainly. So I think if you wanted to take the 6-week block and make it more like a 4-week block, you definitely could do that, because we were feeling like the thread was wearing a bit thin towards the end of this one.
It was a big finish, but I don't know if my young daughter there's like a coolness factor with Alexander because of conquering
the scale
and everything like that. I just don't think that rang with her. So
I think you could definitely condense this 6-week section without too much trouble if you're thinking that this entire level 1 is a little bit too long, this would be a great place where you could probably chop out a couple of weeks and still be just fine.
And
because
then
the week before and the week after Greece are not
absolutely
super packed.
Another honorable mention would be the Dan Carlin podcast, and I'll make sure to give that to you.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if this one's behind the paywall yet. He only keeps the last like 5 or 6 episodes. But this would be the King of Kings series, which was kind of the arc of Persia coming through kind of the Mesopotamian area. And then I think it finished with Alexander just at the end, but he didn't do Alexander's thing, but it kind of finished there. And then he had a subsequent one on his Hardcore History Addendum podcast about Alexander and his mother. And it was about a 3-hour podcast. And I think with the King of Kings and that episode might be like 20 something hours of like just history, audio history. Loved every minute of it.
Dan Carlin's fantastic. Though.
Fantastic. And so if you're looking for some additional content for you to enjoy, that's another recommendation as well. The King of Kings series, you could probably do it with the Persians and then lead right up into the Greeks.
Or you could just listen to the addendum of just Alexander
and his mom, and it was really, really good. And he was of the same mind as I am. That I think Angelina Jolie did a really good job as his mom.
Yeah,
really the creep factor with all the snakes and everything.
Yes, if you don't like snakes, don't watch that movie. But
she had a thing about snakes.
There's a lot of snakes. Yeah. But yeah, otherwise it was good. So this is a good week. We are wrapping this up. We're really excited to get to India and do something just kind of totally different.
We're actually kind of going back in time a little bit. We've kind of come all the way up to 330s time frame, BCE time frame, and now we are going to go back in time and go to the Indus Valley. So we're going to find out where we just left with Alexander as he makes his way back to central Bactria or back to Babylon, and he dies of his infection, or he was killed. I don't know. And right as we touched India, it's really, really cool because it's kind of the Indus Valley region, kind of a little bit south of that. And now we're going to go back in time, kind of early pyramids time frame. The Great Pyramids being built at the same time Indus Valley civilization was coming up. So we're going to go back a little bit in time, and then we're going to come up through India for the next couple of weeks. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Nice change of pace because we've been really, really in the Middle East for a long time, and now we're kind of going east, and hopefully we'll touch a little bit of China here towards the end. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see you guys.